You know that specific, really heavy feeling you get when you finally decide to learn something new?
Oh, yeah. The morning after of setting a goal.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm talking about the moment right after the initial excitement wears off.
Hmm.
Like, let's say you decide to learn a new language. You buy the textbooks, you download like 3 different apps, maybe even subscribe to a bunch of YouTube channels.
You get all the gear.
You have all the gear, you are so ready, and then you actually sit down to do it. You open the book, you see the conjugation tables and the thousands of vocabulary words, the grammar rules that make absolutely no sense, and you just look at this mountain of information.
And you just completely freeze.
You freeze completely. It feels physically impossible. You think, I need to study for 3 hours a day just to scratch the surface of this.
Right.
And because you don't have 3 hours, you do the only logical thing. You do absolutely nothing.
It's the classic learner's paralysis. We convince ourselves that that learning equals memorizing the entire library.
Yeah.
But if you look at how successful learners actually operate, people who master skills quickly and efficiently, they aren't trying to boil the ocean. They're hacking the process.
And that is exactly what we are doing today. We are unpacking a learner's blueprint.
Yes, we are.
We've gone through a stack of instructional transcripts from a series called English Easy Practice. Now, I want to be clear right off the bat here. On the surface, these look like simple language tutorials.
Very simple.
But when you actually read through them, when you look at the methodology underneath the lessons, you realize they aren't just teaching English.
No, not at all. They are teaching a complete philosophy of mastery. It's a specific set of principles that combine productivity strategies, behavioral psychology, and even some neuroscience to totally shortcut the learning curve.
We're going to break this down into 3 main pillars that kept popping up in the sources. First, we have the efficiency hack, something called the 80-20 rule, which honestly completely changed how I look at my to-do list.
It's a big one.
Second, we have the biology of mindset, why positive thinking isn't just fluffy self-help advice, but actually a mechanical necessity for your brain to function.
And third, the counterintuitive truth about motivation. And I have to say, this one is the game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
Spoiler alert for everyone listening. Everything you think about how to get motivated is probably backward.
So whether you're trying to learn Spanish Python coding or just how to manage your time better at work, this deep dive is for you. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the strategy, the 80-20 rule. I've heard this thrown around in business circles, usually called the Pareto principle.
Correct. It's a concept that dates back to economics, but it applies to almost everything. The core idea, which the sources highlight repeatedly, is that 80% of your results come from only 20% of your efforts.
Okay.
In almost any endeavor, there are a few high-value actions and a massive amount of low-value noise.
Okay, so let's apply this to learning, because I think this is where people really get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
The source material uses English learning as the primary example. What does the 80-20 rule look like there? Because usually when I try to learn a language, I'm trying to memorize literally every single word I see.
And that is the fatal mistake right there. That is trying to learn 100% of the material with equal effort.
Yeah, I guess it is.
The source gives us a really specific, arguably shocking data point here. If you are learning English, or really any major language, you might think you need to know tens of thousands of words to be fluent. You see the dictionary and it's huge.
Massive.
But the reality, you only need about 1,000 words to understand 80% of normal daily conversations.
Wait, hold on. Only 1,000 words. That sounds incredibly low.
It sounds low, but think about your daily life. Think about the conversations you actually have. You use the same core pronouns, the same connecting words, the same basic verbs over and over again.
That's true.
Like, I went to the store. What do you think? Can you help me? That is the vital 20%. That gives you 80% of comprehension.
So the other hundreds of thousands of words.
They are the obscure 80%. The complex grammar rules the poetic adjectives. The specific terminology for, 18th century nautical equipment.
Right.
The source emphasizes that most learners waste months, maybe years, trying to memorize that obscure stuff. They are focusing on the 80% of work that only gives 20% of the results.
That is wild. It completely changes the scope of the project, doesn't it?
Holy.
Instead of saying, I need to learn English, which is massive and terrifying, it's, I need to learn these specific 1,000 words. It feels possible.
That seems possible. That's actually a direct quote from one of the characters in the source material. When they realize this, the anxiety just drops.
Wow.
But what's fascinating here is that the source doesn't stop at language. It explicitly expands this to business and productivity to show it's a universal law.
Right. I saw that note about sales and daily tasks.
Exactly. In business, companies often discover that 80% of their sales come from just 20% of their customers or 20% of their products.
Makes sense.
So the strategic move isn't to try and sell everything to everyone equally. It's to double down on that top 20%, the vital few.
And they applied it to the daily to-do list too, right?
Uh-huh.
This is the one that really called me out.
Yes. The source argues that if you have a to-do list with 10 items, usually only 2 of those things actually matter.
Only 2.
Those 2 items will move the needle on your long-term goals. The other 8, they're just busy work.
Checking email, reorganizing your desktop icons, color-coding your calendar.
Exactly. Things that make you feel productive but don't actually achieve anything. The source says we gravitate toward those 8 easy things because they are low stress.
Yeah.
But if you do the 2 important things first, the 20%, you've already had a successful day.
I feel attacked. I definitely spend most of my day on the 8 things that don't matter because they just feel easier. It's instant gratification.
We all do. It's human nature. But the lesson for the learner is about smart energy use. The source puts it this way. Instead of studying grammar rules for hours, which is low-value passive work, you should be doing high-value activities.
Like what?
Things like describing things you see or talking about your day.
Because that's what you actually do with a language. You talk about your life.
Precisely. You stop worrying about being perfect and focus on what really matters. That's the phrase they use. You maximize your return on investment for your study time.
Okay, so we have our strategy. Focus on the vital few, the 20% that gives the biggest return. Don't try to learn everything, just learn the important things.
Right.
But here's the thing. I can know the strategy. I can know I only need 1,000 words. But I can still stare at the page and feel stupid. I can still feel like I'm just not good at this.
And that brings us to the second pillar. The strategy is the map, but this is the engine, the physiology of positivity.
Now, I have to be honest here. When I see the power of positive thinking in a source, my skepticism radar goes way up.
Sure, it sounds a bit cliche.
It sounds like magic. Just believe, and it will happen. It reminds me of those motivational posters with kittens hanging from a branch.
Hang in there.
Exactly. But the source material here was actually quite grounded.
It was. They aren't talking about manifesting success in some magical sense. They aren't saying if you think about a Ferrari, you'll get a Ferrari.
Right.
They're talking about how the brain biologically functions under stress versus how it functions when it feels capable.
So let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
What actually happens in the brain when we sit down to learn and say, this is too hard?
The source is very clear on this. When you tell yourself, I can't do this, or my English is bad, your brain perceives a threat. It struggles.
A physical threat.
Yes, it triggers a stress response releasing cortisol. And when the brain is in that fight or flight mode, it shuts down the very centers you need for learning. You literally can't remember as well.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy then. You say, I can't. So your brain says, okay, survival mode, shut down the language center, and then you really can't.
Basically, yes, you are physiologically sabotaging yourself. But the flip side is true.
Yeah.
The source notes that when you say, I can do this, or I will try my best, the brain works better. It stays calm.
Just from changing the words.
Yes, and that calm factor is crucial. When you are calm, your brain is receptive. You remember more, you speak more clearly, you learn faster.
So this isn't about being happy-go-lucky. It's about keeping your brain in a state where it can actually absorb information. It's a performance hack.
Exactly. It's purely mechanical. The source suggests a technique called replacing.
By replacing negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Because we all have them.
Yes. It's not enough to just try to stop thinking negatively. The brain doesn't like a vacuum. You have to actively swap the thought.
So what does that look like?
So the negative thought is, what if I fail? The source says you replace that with failure is just a step to success.
Failure is just a step to success. I like that. It reframes the mistake.
Yeah.
Instead of a stop sign, it's a stepping stone.
Positive people, according to the text, see mistakes as lessons. They don't feel bad when they mess up. They don't attach shame to it. They just say, that's okay, I'll try again.
There was one specific physical tip they mentioned that I found really interesting. It seems almost too simple. Smile more.
It does sound simple, but it's powerful biofeedback.
How so?
The instruction is to smile more while you are learning and tell yourself, I will try my best. It changes the internal narrative from fear to hope.
Just the act of smiling.
Right, because when you smile, you are physically signaling to your body that you are safe. that you aren't under threat. That allows the brain to stay in that learning receptive mode.
So if I'm frowning and clenching my jaw while I'm trying to code or speak Spanish, I'm basically telling my brain we are in danger.
Exactly. And your brain will prioritize safety over learning. So relax your face, smile. It feels weird at first, but it actually works.
So strategy is 80-20. Mindset is keep the brain calm and positive so it works. But now we hit the biggest hurdle of all, the one that destroys most New Year's resolutions by February.
The execution.
The motivation paradox.
Yes.
This is the one that really hit home for me. Because we've all been there. You have the plan, you have the positive attitude mostly.
Mostly.
But it's 6 p.m., you're tired after work, you made dinner, and you just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You're waiting to feel inspired.
And you will wait forever. The source material is brutally honest about this. It identifies the problem as waiting for motivation.
Waiting for it to arrive.
Right. We have this idea that the order of operations is first I feel motivated, then I take action. We think motivation is this lightning bolt that strikes us and makes us want to work.
Right, like I'll go for a run when I feel energetic, I'll study when I feel ready.
But the source reveals the core truth here. Motivation comes after action, not before.
Let's say that again because it's so counterintuitive. Motivation comes after action.
It's a loop. The source describes it perfectly. You take a small action even if you are tired.
Okay.
You achieve a small win. Maybe you learn just 3 words or you write 1 line of code. That win makes you feel proud. And that feeling of pride generates the motivation to keep going.
So you have to force the ignition. You can't wait for the engine to start itself.
Exactly. The source shares a specific anecdote about a character who feels tired after work. He just wants to scroll on his phone. But he decides to do just 5 minutes of English. Not an hour. Just 5 minutes.
That's the 5-minute hack.
Yes. He listens to a podcast for 5 minutes. He learns 3 new words. Suddenly, he feels good. He feels capable.
We get that quick win.
Right. And because he feels good, he wants to study more. The action created the feeling. If he had waited for the feeling, he never would have started.
It reminds me of the analogy they used about children learning to walk. I loved this part because it really exposes how our adult egos get in the way.
The walker analogy. It's a beautiful perspective on failure and action.
It really is.
The source points out that children fall many times. They stumble, they wobble, they look silly, but they never wait until they are perfect walkers before they try to walk.
Can you imagine a baby sitting there thinking, you know, my technique isn't quite there yet. I'm going to wait until I've read a few more manuals on gravity before I try standing up.
It sounds ridiculous, but that is exactly what adults do. We say, I'll start speaking Spanish when I'm fluent, or I'll start that project when I know exactly how to do it.
We are terrified of the stumbling phase.
The source is telling us to be like the child. Take action, fall, fail, and grow. Don't wait to be perfect. The child becomes a walker by walking, not by thinking about walking.
So we need to lower the barrier to entry. Just 5 minutes, just 10 minutes. Start small today. Embrace the stumble.
Even 10 minutes can change everything. That's the exact quote. It breaks the paralysis.
Okay, so we've got these 3 pillars.
Yeah.
Efficiency, mindset, action. But I want to get really practical here for a minute. The source has mentioned a specific technique that seems to combine all 3 of these things. It's called shadowing.
Yes, shadowing. This is really the synthesis of everything we've discussed. If you take one practical tool away from this deep dive, this should be it.
For our listeners who haven't heard of this, what exactly is shadowing? Because it sounds kind of mysterious.
It does. It's a training technique where you listen to a speaker, like on an audio track or a video, and you repeat what they say out loud.
Okay.
But the key distinction is you don't just wait until the end of the sentence and repeat it robotically. You try to speak almost simultaneously or just a split second behind them. You are shadowing their voice.
So you're actively mimicking them in real time.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
mimic their speed, their emotion, their pauses, and their rhythm. You try to become them.
Okay, so why does this hit all 3 pillars?
First, efficiency. The 80-20 rule. The source says speaking out loud trains your mouth and brain simultaneously,
Double duty.
right? You aren't just passively reading grammar rules, which is low value. You are actually producing the language, which is high value.
Yeah.
You're practicing the thing you actually want to do, which is speak.
Right. It's like going to the gym for your mouth. You're building that muscle memory.
Precisely. And for the mindset pillar, it builds confidence. The source mentions that shadowing helps you sound natural.
Yeah, because you're copying someone who already sounds natural.
Exactly. When you hear yourself speaking clearly and with the right rhythm, it reinforces that positive loop. You think, hey, I sound pretty good. That calms the brain down.
And obviously it's action.
It is pure action. You cannot shadow passively. You have to open your mouth. You have to engage muscles. It forces you out of the studying mode and into the doing mode. The sources emphasize repeatedly that speaking out loud is crucial. You can't just listen.
I love that. It takes it from an academic exercise to a physical sport almost.
And notice the connection to the Walker analogy again. When you shadow, you will stumble. You will miss words. You will get tongue-tied.
Oh, for sure.
You'll sound a bit funny at first, but you are walking. You aren't waiting to be perfect. You are doing the thing.
It really is a comprehensive blueprint. It's funny, we started this deep dive thinking about language learning, but I'm sitting here thinking about my email inbox, my workout routine, and that book I've been meaning to write.
That's the beauty of these principles. They are universal because they address fundamental human psychology, not just linguistics.
Yeah.
The brain learns the exact same way, whether it's conjugating verbs or learning a new software interface.
So let's recap the learner's blueprint before we let everyone go. If we want to hack the psychology of mastery, what are the steps?
Sure. First, the strategy. Apply the 80-20 rule. Don't try to learn everything. Identify the 20%, like those 1,000 core words or the 2 critical tasks on your list that give you 80% of the results. Focus your energy there.
Second, the mindset, the physiology of positivity. This isn't fluff. Replace "I can't" with "I'll try to keep your brain calm and functioning." Smile to signal safety to your nervous system.
And third, the execution, the motivation paradox. Stop waiting to feel ready. Motivation is a result, not a cause. Use the 5-minute hack. Commit to just 5 minutes of action to generate the pride that fuels further work.
And finally, bring it all together with active practice, like shadowing, where you are actually doing, not just studying.
Ideally, speaking out loud, getting messy, being the walker who isn't afraid to fall.
Exactly. You know, there's one question that popped into my head while we were discussing the motivation versus action segment.
What was that?
The source talked about how we wait for the perfect time to start a business or relationship or a hobby. And they said the perfect time never comes.
It's a very sobering thought. We spend so much of our lives in the waiting room.
We really do. So here's a thought for you to carry into the rest of your day. Think about that one project or skill you've been putting off because you're not ready or you don't have enough time.
The thing you're waiting to feel motivated for.
Right. If the sources are right and the perfect time never comes and motivation only starts after you move, what is the 5-minute version of that project you could start right now? Not tomorrow. Right now. Before you even take your headphones off.
Could you write one sentence? Could you do one push-up? Could you learn one word?
Just 5 minutes. See what happens. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Keep learning and stay positive.
We'll see you next time.